Hey everyone, this is Nashwalk Steve here. This is my first video post that I've ever done. The reason I decided to record this and post it is that I was looking for some videos on repair for this Z120 for our kids, and I couldn't find much online. I was having trouble with the chain falling off and realized I needed to replace the drive sprocket and clutch assembly, so I dove into it myself and thought, if I document what I do, maybe it'll save someone some time in the future. So I end up doing repairs either on a snowmobile or something around the house. It seems almost every weekend. So I thought if I document these and post them, maybe it'll save someone some time at some point in the future. And if that happens, then it's worth my time to document it and help someone down the road. So here we go. Here I am making a repair to my kid's 2001 Arctic Cat Z120. The chain started falling off kind of regularly, and each time I'd pull the cover off the back sprocket here and put the chain back on. Eventually took a closer look and realized that the drive sprocket, which is attached to the clutch assembly, was really worn out, and that's why the chain was falling off. So I'll show what I did here to get that removed and replaced. At this point I've already got it removed, so I will show you what it looks like with the clutch assembly removed. That's right here. This piece I took off. It was on that shaft. Had to also take off the brake assembly, which is sitting up here now. I'll show that, how that kind of came apart. You have the chain tensioner right here, and then I also pulled the chain off once I got everything out, and that's just laying here ready to go back on. So that's what it looks like all stripped apart. As I get pieces put back together, I'll show that too. For comparison's sake here, I'll show the old drive sprocket clutch assembly. Here's the old one. You can see where that chain was riding is really low, really worn out. And then here's the new one. You can see those sprockets are much more pronounced there. Kind of compare the two a little bit, see what it should look like and what the old one looked like. So it should definitely solve the problem with the chain finding its way off there. One more look at it here with everything disassembled. I was going to replace the spring that provides the tension to the chain tensioner down there. It's just hooked onto the exhaust outlet there and connected to the end of the tensioner. When I pulled it off, the spring seemed really strong yet. It completely recoiled back to its original position, so I decided not to replace that part. I have the replacement spring here, and it really doesn't look like it's that strong of a spring, so I can't imagine I'm going to get any more tension on that tensioner by replacing this spring. I'm not sure if that's the right part. It says it is, but it certainly seems like a weaker spring than what's already there, so we're going to go ahead and leave that in place. So in reassembling this here, I first put the brake strap here back on, slid it back onto the spindle here, did not put the clip back on or anything, and then slid the new clutch drive sprocket assembly onto the shaft. You get it about halfway on, and then the key starts to interfere. So what I did to make that lock onto this, took this vice grip here, put it on like that, and I was able to kind of wiggle this drive sprocket back and forth until it lined up with the keyway on the shaft, and then it was able to kind of pop into position, and then I'll be able to lift this chain up here and get this sprocket pushed all the way onto the shaft there, and then tighten this up. One thing I'm going to point out here too is in order to get this out and back in, the muffler had to be removed. So the exhaust is connected here by 2 bolts, and the muffler sits right here, and there's also a spring that connects it. So those are there they are removed, and those 2 nuts and the spring. That'll go in kind of at the very end here once everything in this position is located where it has to go. Okay, I just got the brake strap reassembled and adjusted so it's got the right amount of travel when you pull the brake lever. And then I'm about to put the or tighten up the drive sprocket and clutch assembly again. And this is what goes into that. Note that you've got this strange spacer right at the very end of the screw there. That kind of sits inside of that hub there. Then you have a wide fender washer and a smaller washer, looks like a lock washer that goes in there as well. So make sure you don't forget about that one there. It kind of hides itself inside there. So we'll go ahead and get this back in place here and tightened up. And then once that is tightened up with a wrench, we can go ahead and get the exhaust back in place. You can see I already got the chain restrung here. You can just hold the tensioner all the way down without that exhaust being here, and you're able to adjust that chain as you need to get it back onto the drive sprocket there so everything looks nice and lined up. So I'll get that tightened up, and then we'll get the exhaust back on and finish this up and give it a little test. You can see how the exhaust fits back in place there. You kind of set it in its position. There's a little rubber shock absorber down at the bottom, and then a spring right in here that you need to stretch up and attach to the little loop on the exhaust. And then these studs stick out from the engine. You need to put the nuts on there. Don't forget about the little gasket that sits in there as well to make that seal. I got one nut finger tight. I'll put the other one on, and then we're getting close to trying out this new part here. We'll see how it goes. Before we start this up and try it out, I'm going to explain how I got this clutch drive sprocket assembly off in the first place. It wasn't as I expected it would be, so I figured I'd talk about that. I was hoping I'd be able to take this, loosen this up and take this part out by itself without having to deal with the brake, without having to deal with the exhaust, and that turned out not to be the case. I ended up having to take both the brake off and the exhaust out. It kind of all happened. It happens because this exhaust is in the way no matter what. You can't even get the brake strap off without getting that exhaust out of the way. So you can start with that. That's easy. 2 nuts there. Despite all the rust on there, they came off really quite well. And then this brake comes off. You just loosen up these nuts that are right in here. They're kind of squeezing on this plate. And then that can lift this cable out of the way. But then you need to weasel this out from the back of here. And here was the challenge. For some reason, there's interference there with this plastic housing for the suspension of the sled and the brake in there. It actually is indented there and rubbing for some strange reason. I don't know where the problem lies, but it was hard to get that out. I had to wiggle it back and forth quite a bit to get that brake strap off and out of there. Once the brake strap is out of there, you're able to get a good grip on this drum here, this part of the clutch assembly, and that thing comes off pretty well. I did use a little bit of force with the pry bar, but once it started coming off, it was easy to slide off. So that's how it comes off. Don't try to take it off by itself. Get rid of the brake, get rid of the exhaust. It'll save you a lot of headache as you go down the road here. So I'm gonna get this back in order here. I'll leave this off so we can see it, and we'll try to run this and see if everything works smoothly without any strange noises or rubbing anywhere. So we'll see how that goes. Alright, I'm not sure about your 120, but this one takes a long time to warm up, and if it's not fully warm, it's going to die immediately when you give it any gas. But it's warmed up now, and I tried it a couple times here, and it seems to be working alright. There you can see the interior of that clutch spinning, the outside is stationary as it should be. And then got the back kind of redneck propped up here on a baseball tee, but the track is off the ground, won't go anywhere. And then I'll slowly give it gas. Now I noticed right away when the clutch was engaging, there were a couple of sparks shooting out. I'm gonna hope that's part of the wearing process. So that looks pretty good to me. That clutch does stop really fast when you let go of the gas, but that's always kind of been the nature of this snowmobile. I don't think a kid's ever had to use the brakes to stop. It pretty much stops itself. as soon as the gas is let off. So I'm going to go ahead and call that a successful change out of that drive sprocket and clutch assembly. We'll let the kids try it out from here and see how it goes, and if that chain stops falling off, then we've got success. That's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll keep posting stuff as I fix it around the house, and hopefully it'll save someone some time in the future. Thanks.